Welcome back to Face to Faces, and I'm delighted to have Prof. Jonathan Jansen back with us. It's been about a week since we spoke. Have you written a book since then?
Yeah, I finished one when the lockdown started. I got into a memoir on learning that I hope young people would find inspiring. And once that was done, I started the new book, which is on a very boring subject about the regulatory agencies and curriculum change and all of that stuff. But I absolutely am enjoying the quiet and the concentrated time to think and write. And
Andy, you told me you've got a delivery on its way. I'm going to ask you to speak up just a little bit. So, JJ, one of the big things that's probably changing radically right now because people aren't seeing the people that they normally see. Let's talk leadership today, and tell me what might we have learned from leadership because of the pandemic?
Well, that's a very good question because, I always, when there's a crisis, I always look at leadership and how leadership manages a crisis. You might remember a book I wrote called As by Fire, which was about how university leaders managed in the, horrible time of 2015-16 when campuses were burning. And so now you have a pandemic, and I've applied my mind to this, looking at our politicians in particular, and asking the question, what did we learn? Positive lessons and negative lessons so far from leadership in a pandemic. And I want to suggest 7 things. One is we have really learned the importance of a simple, singular message from the president's office. This is so crucial, especially in a public health crisis. You need to have a message. It's got to be simple and straightforward and consistent. And thankfully, as far as President Ramaphosa is concerned, I think he ticks all the boxes when it comes to that simple and singular message. I'm not sure that it is true of his broader leadership, for example, at the level of the cabinet, because, they've been all over the show with respect to everything from social distancing to the purchasing of alcohol, to hot foods versus cold foods, and so on. That is the worst possible thing. So if you think of leadership not as located within the singular, the hero model of leadership, but as a collective leadership, then I think we've got a mixed bag here of very strong presidential leadership with the singularity of messaging versus, the broader leadership behavior. The second thing that has emerged in this pandemic is the importance of telling the truth. You've got to level with people. You've got to say, look, the numbers are low because we haven't done enough testing. The reason we cannot open the schools is because of the real danger of a second or third wave of the coronavirus. And what you expect from leadership in a democracy is to tell the truth. Unfortunately, that's not true in many parts of the world, where there's a lot of gaslighting, such as on the part of President Trump. And you can see the mess that the US is in, not just because the messaging is all over the place, but because of lies. And I think this is something, again, that I believe that our president, in relying on scientific advice, as opposed to political or spiritual and other kinds of advice, has served us well. The third issue that I found to be extremely important with leadership in a pandemic is the importance of the leadership example. That is, people look to you, more so in developing countries, people look to the leader to set the pace, to set the tone, and to set the example. We did not always have that. You might recall in the years of President Thabo Mbeki, he set a very poor leadership example. He didn't tell the truth. His message was all over the place, and as a result, upwards of 300,000 people might have died needlessly because there wasn't a leadership example. And I think that when you have cabinet ministers going shopping, having already declared the lockdown, or another one going to have a fancy lunch with a former minister as well. I mean, this is just bad news. This is not the kind of thing that inspires confidence in the polity. And I think more than ever before, we need the example of the leaders to reflect the policies that they themselves have set, and for that to be observed. The fourth thing that is so important when you're leading in a pandemic is the importance of empathetic understanding. In other words, you've got to find a way of balancing the health needs of people, the real fear about getting sick and dying, with the need of people to eat, the economic needs of people. And I think, again, we've been well served here by our president, at least, in keeping those two things in conversation. Yes, you need to be in lockdown, but yes, you also need to eat. And you've heard poor people say in our country, I hope I get ill and get to hospital because then at least I have something to eat. Well, that is horrific. And a leadership that shows empathetic understanding balances those two things in a way that give people a sense of wholeness. The fifth thing that's important for me is the importance of human persuasion. Look, this pandemic is serious. And yes, I have, from the word go, supported the efforts of our government to persuade people to stay at home. What you don't do in a pandemic is to beat people into submission, is to, take away the livelihoods of some small-time retailer, in a township. And I hope that when we reset this impulse to beat people up, to be authoritarian, to coerce, is dealt with. I believe that with most South Africans, you can, by giving people the facts, by taking time to educate, by giving information, sharing information broadly, you can have the kind of leadership that depends on persuasion as opposed to coercion. And that is very, very important. Number 6, I think in terms of leadership, we have seen the importance of sacrificial giving, of giving big time. And here I really do have to point not just to the public sector, but to the private sector, where you've had, for example, 2 of the families in the Oppenheimer empire donating R1 billion each. And that's not the only things they're donating to help in a time of crisis. You've seen people with very little to give, taking out pots and pans and making food for children who lose out on the school nutrition program because of the lockdown, and make sure that children get fed. So at all levels of our society, this is so crucial, not to focus only on yourself, especially as leadership, but to focus on others and to lead through what I call sacrificial giving. And number 7, if there is anything important that a leader does in a crisis like this pandemic, it is to give hope. Yes, you've got to tell the truth, but you also have to tell it in such a way that people have a sense that we are in this together, that we will get out of this at some point, that no virus, survives forever without vaccines and treatments and other kinds of interventions. And so giving people a sense that, yes, it's dark now, but it's going to get better tomorrow. And that, for me, is leadership in a pandemic.
Gee, what a brilliant summary. I actually had time to go and put the kettle on. No, of course I didn't. That is brilliant. 7 incredible lessons. If you don't mind, I'm going to post those along with this little clip so that people can remind themselves about it. And what I'd like to do next week? Can we revisit the topic that you've been discussing a lot, which is the emotional impact on learners and their teachers, because that is so huge. And by then we will also know whether the lockdowns extend. We're going to know a lot more. So could we do that next week with you?
Yeah, let's do that.
Nice to see you again. Thanks, JJ. Bye.